Some filmmakers just want to watch a billion-dollar franchise burn. Let's talk about Joker, Folie Deux. What's up, my dude? Your friendly neighborhood Tony here, and as I do with all my movie reviews, I'm going to give you just a little bit of information about Joker 2, Folie Deux, who made it, what it's about, all that good stuff. Then I'm going to go into the things I did and did not like about the movie, the pros and cons. And finally, I'll let you know who I think it's for, if anyone. If that kind of thing sounds cool to you and you want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies coming out, make sure you subscribe. In Joker, Folie Deux, Arthur Fleck, aka Joker, is institutionalized in Arkham Asylum, awaiting trial for his crimes as the Joker. While struggling with his dual identities, Arthur not only stumbles upon love, but also finds the music that's always been inside of him. So yeah, right off the bat, if you weren't sure whether or not this movie is a musical, it absolutely is in every sense of the word. For those that are unfamiliar, Joker, Folie Deux is a follow-up to the 2019 movie Joker. And just like that original movie, it's once again directed by Todd Phillips. Now, if you don't know that name, he's the guy that directed the Hangover trilogy. And for those of you that really enjoyed the first Hangover movie, you probably remember that parts 2 and 3 weren't nearly as good. So with the sequel to Joker, is Todd Phillips finally gonna be able to make a sequel that lives up to the original? Well, let's start with the pros. The first thing that stood out to me as a positive with this movie is something that was also a positive in the original, and that is the performances. Specifically with Joaquin Phoenix, once again, he is revisiting this role. He lost a ton of weight again, just like he did in the first movie, which cannot be healthy. I definitely don't recommend he continues to do that. But as he was with the original, you can tell he's once again committed to portraying this character as accurately as possible. Now, do I think he's also going to get nominated for an Oscar for his role in this movie like he did with the original? No, I don't think so, but I will say that you can tell that he is not phoning this one in. Aside from him, you have Lady Gaga, who is playing Harley Quinn in this movie, or at least a version of Harley Quinn. And it really does feel like they brought her on board, one, because she is a pretty solid actress, but probably more importantly because she's a musician. So a lot of her time on screen is going to be spent singing and performing. And in that, I felt like she did a pretty good job. You also have a few kind of side characters throughout the movie, some of which you'll remember from the original Joker, and they return, and I feel like were probably another big strong point of the movie. I'm not going to spoil exactly who returns, but there are a couple people in particular that when they were on screen, it felt like they really elevated the film. You also have Brendan Gleeson, who plays a guard at Arkham Asylum, and I love Brendan Gleeson. I think he's a fantastic actor, and although I would have liked to have seen more from his character, the time that he was on screen, I feel like he did really well. So overall, the talent on screen I felt like is pretty strong, and it's never a bad idea to get talented actors and actresses in your movie. Aside from that, I thought the movie looked really good. It's very visually appealing. A lot of the cinematography, a lot of the shot choices, the way that they lit some of the scenes, the colors that they chose to use, I thought were really good and compelling. You've got the same cinematographer returning from the original movie, and although I feel like a lot of the shots in that first movie were more memorable than a lot of the shots in this one, there are certainly a few that made me stop and kind of just appreciate what they were doing with it. Aside from just the visuals and the shot choices, I feel like the production quality, the level of production was really high on this movie. A lot of the sets I thought were really good. The costumes, the sound design is really good as well. If you have a chance to watch this in IMAX or with Dolby Atmos, definitely do. You know, the movie cost about $200 million, and although I don't know if I can say that they spent all of that money well, at the very least, they didn't slack off when it came to a lot of the production quality. Aside from that, another positive I'll say about this movie is that it takes some really big swings. You know, it's really easy to, when you have a movie as successful as the original Joker, just try to rinse and repeat that once again. And I definitely feel like they tried to do something different with this movie. And not just the fact that they blended it in with musical elements and all of that, but really the story that they were trying to tell here, I felt like was unique and a departure from the original Joker. And so for that, I'll give it some points. But that also leads into some of my cons, so let's go ahead and get into that. And buckle in, because there's a few things. First off, the musical elements. Okay, as much as I appreciate that they were trying to do something different and unique by turning this into a form of musical, one of the things that's important when it comes to a musical film is that you have the songs kind of elevate the content and tell the story and push the story forward and elicit emotion in the viewer. And I don't think any or almost any of the songs throughout the movie did that. You know, at first I was willing to give them a shot, and as we would go into the musical numbers, I found them to be somewhat interesting, but then after a while, it just becomes more of the same scene over and over again. There's nothing unique about the performances or the sets that they take place on. The songs, there's nothing original or new about them. And it really just feels like you're watching the movie and watching the story progress, and then it just comes to a complete halt so that you can listen to a musical number for a few minutes. And as the movie went on, I found myself just more and more bored every time they would start singing. Aside from that, and probably because of that, the movie felt so slow. The pacing, I feel like, was way off. Throughout the movie, I found myself looking at my watch, you know, not necessarily because I thought the movie might have been coming to a conclusion, but instead because I was just curious about how long we were wasting on different scenes. I remember getting an hour and even an hour and a half into the movie and just thinking, are we going anywhere with this? Or like, what is the major conflict here? Like, when are we going to get some kind of development in the story? It just felt like it dragged the entire way through. For me, it felt like this movie just didn't have enough behind it in order to make a compelling 2-hour plus feature film. It felt like an epilogue for the first movie. It felt like if you've ever bought Blu-rays and you go through the special features, and sometimes they'll have like a little side story about the characters in the special features that's like 20 minutes long. It felt like that's what this was. It felt like after the first Joker movie, they have this little side story about him going to Arkham Asylum or him going to trial, and that's it. But instead, they decided to stretch that out into a 2-hour plus movie. And there just wasn't enough meat on the bones to satisfy you. Also, another problem I have with this movie is in kind of the romance story between him and Harley Quinn. And if you remember in the first movie, there's kind of a romance story there as well with him and his neighbor, except you find out towards the end of the movie that was all in his head, and the neighbor didn't even know who he was outside of, seeing him a couple times in the hallway or in the elevator. And so while I'm watching this movie and I'm seeing all these things happen between him and Harley Quinn, or just him and any other characters, all of these kind of like fantastical, almost unbelievable scenes, I can't help but think in my head that, is this real, or is this him kind of hallucinating again and just making up a false reality in his own head? And that, I think, makes for an interesting plot. Like, I feel like when you're able to kind of create that uncertainty in your viewer, that's cool, that's interesting, that's different. Except they never do that in the movie. At no point in the movie do they play on, oh, is this real or is this not real? And so it plays as if, oh, all of this is real and all of this is actually happening. And it's unbelievable, and it's kind of uninteresting. And also, a lot of the story itself just comes from the original movie. And I'll try to explain that in that a big part of this movie is about his trial. And so because of that, you're flashing back to things that happened in the first movie, or you're revisiting characters from the first movie and ideas from the first movie. And so it just feels like they didn't have enough of a story here. And so they were just relying on what we already saw. And for that, why are we watching this? I don't know. I just can't shake the idea that this was a waste of time to watch this movie. So, okay, you can definitely tell I don't like it. Who do I think Joker Folie Deux is for? And that is a really tough question to answer, because there's different categories of people when it comes to comic book movies, and also when it comes to the original Joker movie and whether or not you liked it. I think for kind of a general comic book audience, this is not for them. This character that we get in this movie is not at all like the Joker that we know from the comic books. And although in some of those ways it's interesting in how they change him from how he's been in the comic books, in more often it's worse. The character that we get here is nowhere near as interesting or compelling, or doesn't provide that same level of escapism and fantasy as the character that we've gotten from the comics or even from the first movie. So I can't recommend it for, comic book fans. Then there's people that really loved the first movie. That first movie made $1 billion and was a huge hit. But with this movie, I feel like they kind of crap all over the fans of that first one and kind of subvert your expectations, which can be a good thing to do. You know, subverting expectations can make for an interesting story, but they do it in a way here that's almost disrespectful to the fans. It's almost as if they said, oh, you liked that? Well, now we're just going to completely ruin everything that we built in the first one. And it's almost like they're giving the finger to the fans. So I can't recommend it for fans of the original. I truly don't know who this movie is for. If you know, let me know in the comments below. I know right now it's getting kind of mixed to negative reviews in general, but if you truly love Joker Folie à Deux, I want to know why. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to see more kind of casual movie reviews just like this, make sure you subscribe. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Be good.